The MX Master 3 from Logitech is the best productivity mouse of all time, according to YouTube. Wait, didn't I do this already?
Oh, deja vu.
Alright, so a while back I made a video comparing the MX Master 3 to the G502 Hero, also from Logitech, and found that while the much praised Master did better in categories such as design, comfort, and connectivity, the Hero did a lot better when it came to responsiveness, versatility, and features. And although I ultimately scored it as a draw, I personally found that the gaming mouse worked a lot better for me in my everyday use, both in terms of gaming obviously, but also for overall productivity due to its extra buttons and programmability. After I put that video out, someone left a comment asking me to check out the Keychron M6 instead, and I actually ended up loving that thing so much that I made another video crowning it as the new best mouse overall. And since then, I've been using it every single day. But honestly, the world of computer mice, look, I'm still not comfortable using the plural form of mouse in this context, but frankly, I don't know what else to call it. The point is, there are a lot of other products out there in this category, and while I do think the M6 is a fantastic mouse overall, I was starting to wonder whether it really was the best one out there, especially in that budget price range. And in the words of a wise little man with ears that rival my own, no, there is another. So let's take a look at our next contender, the Rapoo MT760L, and see how it stacks up in comparison. The MT760L from Rapoo is a mouse that sets out to do one thing and one thing alone: make a cheaper version of the MX Master 3 without making too many compromises. And I'm not going to bury the lead here. It does this surprisingly well. So in this video, I'm first going to go over what's in the box, and then I'll do a side-by-side comparison of the Rapoo next to its Logitech counterpart and see how well it stacks up. And since this mouse is not trying to be anything else other than a clone of the MX Master 3, I'm not going to judge it by whether or not it beats it in any category, because honestly, it just wasn't made to do so. Although, spoiler alert, it might just be better in several ways after all. But what I will do is rate it in each category based on how well it actually accomplishes living up to its inspiration. So for this video, I'm going to score it on a scale of MX Master 3's, meaning that if the Rapoo is just as good as the MX Master 3, it gets a full master in that category. This feels like it should be illegal somehow, but hey, if Rapoo can make a mouse that looks this much like the MX Master 3 and not get sued by Logitech, then I think I should be able to get away with this too. So without further ado, let's take some inspiration of our own from Hollywood's real-life Prince Charming, Brad Pitt, and ask the age-old question, what's in the box? So for this unboxing, I've acquired the help of my lovely assistant Jasmine. And the very first thing you'll see when you open this rather nice looking box is the mouse itself, which we'll get to in a second. Underneath, there's another little box which contains all of the accessories for this mouse, which includes a nice little manual, which I know we're all dying to read. Then there's a USB-C to USB-A cable, which is fine, I guess. And then there's a little USB-A 2.4 GHz dongle for connecting to your computer. And finally, the mouse itself. And my first impression of this thing is just how remarkably much it both looks and feels like the MX Master 3. The shape of it, the colors and materials, all of it just feels so much like its Logitech counterpart that honestly, you'd be forgiven for mistaking it for the real deal from a quick glance. Overall though, pretty sparse unboxing experience when you compare it to something like the Keychron M6, which came with a braided USB-C cable as well as a myriad of dongles and adapters. But still, it gives you what you need to get started. So, the first category is design, and as I've mentioned several times already, these are two very similar looking devices. The color, the overall shape and layout of the buttons, the placement of the logos, even the cutout for the USB-C charging port is practically identical between the two. But there are some minor differences here. Most notably, the side-scrolling wheel is a lot more prominent on the Rapoo. Where the MX Master 3 sort of hides its horizontal wheel in this nice little cutout, the Rapoo places it front and center on the very edge of the left side of the mouse with a little metallic cutout to highlight it. Other than that, there are a few more metallic accents on the Rapoo as well, with both the 2 buttons on the side and this little button on the top being made from a very glossy metal. While oddly, the regular scroll wheel is not metal, unlike on the Master, which feels like a pretty glaring omission, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this was done just to mitigate the risk of litigation.
I'm just surprised you know the difference between litigate and mitigate.
There are also some other subtle differences, such as the Rapoo being just a bit more angular in its design, whereas the Master is a bit softer and more gently curved, as well as the fact that the MT760L is just a bit shorter than the MX Master 3. But yeah, overall though, these are practically identical, and while the few ways in which they do vary might or might not be something you like, I think that the Rapoo MT760L pretty much lives up to its design daddy. Why did I say that? Anyway, it gets a full MX Master 3 in this category. Part of what makes the MX Master 3 so beloved by nerds around the world, and yes, I can say it because I am one, is how comfortable it is to use over prolonged periods of time. The way it curves up allows your hand to rest on it in a much more natural and relaxing way than on a flatter mouse. This might not seem like a big deal if you've never tried it, but if you're someone that's only ever used a regular office mouse or even a gaming mouse, then switching to something like the MX Master 3 will make a massive improvement in how you feel. And if you're coming from a Magic Mouse, well, then switching out your mouse for a burning hot piece of coal covered in rusty nails would feel like an upgrade, but that's a whole different topic. The question is, how well does the MT760L compare to the Master when it comes to comfort? And the answer, extremely well. Look, once again, there are some subtle differences here which may sway your opinion one way or the other. First of all, the MX Master 3 does have a softer, more rubbery coating on it, which does feel a bit nicer to hold than the more plasticky MT760L. But even so, the Rapoo is still pretty soft to the touch and feels a lot more premium than something like the Keychron M6. Next, the Rapoo is just a bit shorter, like I mentioned before, but it's still just as wide with a thumb rest that works just as well as the Master's, so the difference in how this feels is pretty minimal with a slight edge going to the Master. But then, there's the horizontal scroll wheel. You may or may not be a fan of how it sticks out on the side, but I found that when you're using the mouse, the wheel on the Rapoo is just a lot more accessible and pleasant to use than the one on the Logitech mouse. Because the side-scrolling wheel on the MX Master 3 is hidden away in this little indentation, you have to move your thumb a good deal more to actually use it compared to the MT760L, where it just feels super comfortable and natural even. And finally, the Logitech MX Master 3 is a hefty mouse, coming in at a whopping 141 grams, which is roughly 40% heavier than the 103 grams of the MT760L. And this just makes the Rapoo feel so much better to use, especially over long periods of time. But it's still heavy enough that it has that premium feel of a solid, sturdy mouse, just like the Master has. So a few notable differences here, some better and some worse, but overall, I'd say the Rapoo MT760L gets a full Master 3 in this category as well. The MX Master 3 has a total of 8 buttons, 6 of which can be reprogrammed using Logitech's Logi Options Plus app. It also has gesture support built into the thumb rest, which allows you to basically use it to mimic the trackpad functionality of a laptop, which is a great little feature. The MT760L, on the other hand, has 7 buttons. And not only can you reprogram all of them, but you can also reprogram the scroll function of both scroll wheels to do basically anything you want, like using the horizontal wheel to zoom in and out, for example. So there's a bit more customization available here, which is great, but then again, it's missing the gesture support of the MX Master 3. I'd be tempted to say this is another category where the pros and cons sort of outweigh each other in the end, but there is one other issue here which I feel needs to be addressed. You see, the software itself, which allows you to reprogram the MT760L, is easy enough to use once you get it up and running, but getting to that point might not be so easy. The manual itself doesn't say anything about which software you need to install to reprogram the buttons, so I had to Google the name of the mouse and go to Rapoo's website, then click Downloads and Drivers and download the drivers from there, which installs a program to let you customize the functionality of the mouse. Only that program was entirely incapable of actually finding the mouse, no matter how I tried to connect the damn thing, so I had to do some more Googling to troubleshoot the issue, only to then end up on a Reddit post where someone mentioned they had the same problem and they fixed it by installing the drivers for another Rapoo mouse instead, which I then also did, and voila. So yeah, it worked out in the end, but frankly, the lack of transparency when it comes to how to actually get these features to work, coupled with the lack of gesture support, means I'll have to dock it half a point in this category. So that's half a Master 3 for features. So far, I've been comparing these two productivity-focused mice and finding them to be fairly even in most aspects. But what if I told you that one of these things isn't a productivity mouse at all? Because the Rapoo MT760L is actually a gaming mouse. That's right, not only is this a plot twist the likes of which M. Night Shyamalan hasn't been able to match in 25 years, but it's also completely true. Now, you might be forgiven for missing this, seeing as Rapoo itself advertises it as a multi-mode wireless optical mouse on their website, and in fact the word gaming isn't listed anywhere on their product page at all and seems to only exist as part of the name of the mouse if you look at vendors such as AliExpress or Shein, which aren't the places I'd typically go to look for a mouse anyway. But as it turns out, this thing actually does feel like it was made with gaming in mind. It has an adjustable DPI which ranges from 800 to 4000, which isn't particularly high, but you also don't need it to be higher than 3200 anyway, and DPIs ranging into the tens of thousands are a gimmick. Yes, I'll die on that hill, get at me bro. But it also has a polling rate of up to 1000 Hz, which is pretty good. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what a polling rate is, the simple answer is that it's sort of like the refresh rate on your monitor. The higher the number, the smoother the experience. The MX Master 3, for comparison, has a polling rate of 125 Hz. And while this isn't bad for everyday use, it really is a bit low when it comes to gaming. And where the Master falters, the Rapoo does really well. Sure, if you're a high-level competitive gamer, you're probably going to want something a bit more tailor-made to fit your needs, but for 99% of all gamers out there, this will do the job just fine. So yeah, remember how I said earlier on that this thing wasn't really made to do anything the MX Master 3 doesn't? I lied. Or, well, I Obi-Wan'd you.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Either way, the MT760L gets a score of 2 MX Master 3s in this category. Alright, after that bombshell revelation in the last category, it's time to head back to more familiar grounds here. When it comes to connectivity, these two mice are practically identical. They both come with a USB-A dongle for a 2.4 GHz connection. They both support up to 3 Bluetooth connections that you switch between with the press of a button on the underside of the mouse, and they both charge via a USB-C port on the front. The MT760L has a slightly larger battery than the MX Master 3, but claims to get fewer days of battery life out of their device than Logitech does, so I guess it's a bit more power hungry of a device. Oh, and there's a little storage compartment for the dongle on the underside of the Rapoo, which is nice, but not exactly a game changer. 1 MX Master 3 for the Rapoo here. Look, I pretty much covered versatility when talking about responsiveness, but basically, one of these is a productivity-focused mouse, which is bad for gaming, and the other one is practically an exact copy of that productivity-focused mouse, except it's also great at gaming. That's 2 more masters for the Rapoo. And finally, when it comes to price, this one is fairly simple. You can find both of these devices online at various retailers with slight differences in price, but as a baseline, the MX Master 3 costs about $100, while the Rapoo MT760L costs about $50. You can typically find the Master on sale for a fairly good price, but then again, I bought the Rapoo on sale for just $39, and you'd be hard pressed to find that good of a deal on the Master. So the Rapoo very literally is worth 2 MX Master 3s when you look at the price of each mouse. Overall, I think it's safe to say that the Rapoo MT760L doesn't just live up to the mouse from which it so clearly takes its inspiration, it actually surpasses it in many ways. When I first bought this mouse and started testing it, I wasn't expecting to be blown away by it or even to find much value in it beyond it being a budget version of the MX Master 3. But right from the start, I was blown away by the apparent quality of it, and the more I've used it, the more I've found just how great of a product this truly is. Look, the MX Master 3 was an absolute beast when it came out back in 2019. But the world of tech moves fast, and lately, it feels like Logitech has gotten complacent, releasing stale, overpriced products that feel like they're years behind their competitors, while making statements that show just how out of touch they've gotten. Maybe it's not fair that someone else can come along, rip off your design and improve upon it, then sell that same thing back to your own customers at half the price, but in a way, that's how the world of tech works. Everything we own now was built by people standing on the shoulder of giants, innovating by reiterating and improving upon past designs and ideas. And what that means is that at some point, even the very best thing can be beaten just a few years later by a cheap imitator from a brand you've never heard of. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more tech-related content. Feel free to drop a suggestion in the comments down below on what you'd like to see me cover in the future, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.